And thank you to Pikes Peak Area Council of Governments for putting this together. I think it's a good multi birds with one stone situation where you're getting a lot of information. But the key thing I think is to getting contact information, because what I want you to take away from my presentation, if anything at all, is my email address, because I can help navigate all the programs I'm going to talk about and how to partner with EDA. And as a quick Reader's Digest for myself, I started living in Colorado Springs, so special place in my heart. I worked for NORAD, U.S. Northern Command, for 7 years before moving up north and working for EDA in 2016. So this is EDA's mission. We are a small agency. We are part of the U.S. Department of Commerce, and we focus solely on economic development. And the two kind of takeaways that I want to share with you on this slide is, first, we pride ourselves on locally driven economic development. So it's not about what we want or what the federal government wants. It's about what do your communities want and need, and how do we work with you to do that? Now, there's a lot of hoops and bureaucracy between what you need and want and what EDA can do to partner with you, because we're a federal agency. And so there's this balancing act between being good stewards of taxpayers' dollars and making sure those taxpayers' dollars get to the communities that need them. So we just have to make sure we're balancing it correctly. And the second thing I wanted to share was that we are broken up into 6 regional offices. And I note this because we're in the Denver region, and our office happens to be in Denver for the Denver region, that yellow area. But I also note it because EDA has 2 kind of types of programs. We have programs where the regional offices do the merit review, and then we have programs where they're nationally competed and the headquarters does merit review. And so when you're applying for any of our grants where there's a regional competition, you're competing against those other light yellow states, and then nationally, obviously, the entire country. Let's see if I got it right. Oh, I got it wrong. Okay. So how do communities partner with us? There's basically 3 ways we can work with you to do economic development. And while I just said we pride ourselves on locally driven economic development, we do put one of the biggest stipulations that we have is that whatever it is we're doing, the ultimate goal is that there's going to be a direct correlation to private sector job creation and private investment. That's kind of a key firewall for us for what if the project's going to be competitive and if it's something that we can fund. Otherwise, we're very flexible in how we can work with you. We can work with you for doing at the bottom of that of that kind of flow chart, feasibility studies or planning grants, so that you can do the due diligence necessary to determine what project or what initiative needs to happen. We can work with you on non-construction activities. So if it's workforce development, programming, or if it's business incubator operations, we can do that. And just to give an example, something that we did recently in non-construction activities was working with Exponential Impact up on Nevada in their Survive and Thrive 2.0 program, where we helped small businesses strengthen and get support from loans. And then we can also do construction activities where we are renovating facilities, or we're extending mainline water sewer roads to a business park. An example of what we did here in Colorado was with UCCS's National Cybersecurity Center. We helped renovate a major section of that so that they could do training in cybersecurity skills and development. So those are examples. And then I should note, example, Colorado Springs Park Creekway. We just last summer supported a small planning grant, but it was an important planning grant for Colorado Springs Creekway in understanding how to strengthen the Creekway from an economic development perspective. Okay, so I just went through planning, non-construction, construction type projects. We can do all 3 of those. Giving you just kind of a parameters of what that funding looks like. In the top column is basically the project cost. So think about what is the total cost going to be. Those are the parameters that you have for planning, non-construction, or construction activities with EDA. Like I said, we're a small agency. Just to give you a sense, roughly $400 million is what Congress allocates to us every year nationally. So of that, our region usually gets about 20 million total. So it's not a lot. That being said, where EDA really earns its keep is when Congress passes supplemental funding bills. And I'll get into that with the disaster program that we're currently managing, because that's where we can get, $1.5 $5 billion supplemental programmatic funds. So one of the requirements, and it's been talked about, and I'm glad Leslie talked about it, about CDS, because I wanted to bring it up, but I didn't want to have to go through what does that mean? What does congressionally directed spending mean? And she did a great job at explaining that for everyone, is that we require that there's some match to any of our grants, and it's starting rate. And this is something that used to be 50% starting rate, and now it's 60%. And you can thank Congress for that, because we were reauthorized by Congress in 2024, and they said, okay, from now on, all of EDA's grants will start at a 60% grant rate. What that means is if you have a $10 project, $6 comes from the grant, $4 comes from match from the community. And where does that match come from? It can be private funding, it can be local government funding, it can be state funding, and it can even be some subsets of federal funding, because typically you can't match federal funding with federal funding. However, when it comes to congressionally directed spending towards specific projects, those funds can be used as match. And there's actually an example where we're reviewing an application this month with USDA's funding that they already received, but because congressionally directed spending, I think Leslie did a great job explaining how there's a process now, and it's much more systematic, as opposed to just having access to your member of Congress. So it's really well done, in my opinion. But there's so much more demand now from communities that Congress isn't able to allocate as much money as needed for the project. They can only allocate some amount, and therefore there's now a need to find match to get the rest of that funding, and it can be used as match for EDA grants and other agencies. And then finally, what I want to talk about is guidance from our secretary. Secretary Lutnick just testified on the budget for next year to both the Senate and the House. While I noted that the merit reviews may happen at the regional office and or DC, every grant per an executive order from February of 2025, every grant of $100,000 or more is approved by the secretary. And so he has been approving our grants, and he's been working with us and getting these grants out the door. But some of the guidance that he's given in wanting to really see how we're leveraging public funds is by getting private investment behind those public funds, and ideally at a 2-to-1 rate. And what does private investment mean? It doesn't have to be anything specific to the project itself, but it has to be correlated. So for example, a business that let's say it's a business park and you need to extend water, sewer, roads out to that park. That's the EDA project, is to extend those public infrastructure. But the businesses that are moving in are going to be investing in themselves. They're going to be building their own buildings. They're going to be maybe purchasing more equipment for their existing buildings because they're going to be hiring additional folks. That's all private investment that they're contributing to their own businesses, but as a result of the fact that they now have access to road, water, sewer. So that's what I mean by private investment, and wanting to really show that in any of the grants that we fund. Okay, so here's the obligatory list of programs. I'm not going to go into great detail on them, but what I will say is that in the boxes, the green box is basically what we have funded. It's what Congress has allocated funding for. And as I mentioned about the supplemental and the FY25 disaster supplemental, of which Teller and El Paso counties are eligible because they had flooding in 2023 and 24 that was federally declared disasters. And that's what these funds are for, 23 and 24 disasters. So any disasters in 25, if Congress passes another supplemental, would be under that rubric of funds. But it was $1.5 billion. It's a lot. That's like 3 times our annual appropriations. And we're going through that process right now with applications from across the country. But then our second one, Public Works Economic Adjustment Assistance, that's the one that is our most flexible. It's the one that most of our annual appropriations goes into. And I should note, just so in case anyone's wondering, unfortunately, I don't get to work with EVA very often or at all because EDA funds have not come from the IIJA or the IRA. They've only come from annual appropriations or other supplemental appropriations. And then we have short-term planning, local technical assistance, but that's the same, basically the same that I just talked about with feasibility studies and things like that. In the blue box, we're talking about to be determined, to be announced programs. We have every year a national competition for business incubation and acceleration. It doesn't include anything to do with construction activities, but it's about programmatic activities for business accelerators. And that will be announced hopefully sometime this fiscal year. The federal government's fiscal year ends in September, so we have until the end of September where we believe it will be announced. But before then, we also are hoping to announce a program on supporting AI and supporting the president's action plan on AI. And those are two programs that are still to be determined and to be announced, but we're hoping to have them out as soon as possible. And then finally, what is most, I think, pertinent to the discussion of the loss of having a grant navigator across the states is our partnership planning program. This program is unique for EDA because it's our only institutional capacity building project. Most everything else I was talking about, it's a one-off project. You submit funds for it, you do the activities, and then it's done. This is the one program where year in, year out, EDA is partnering with a regional organization. It's only $70,000 in matches required, but it's to do institutional capacity building and planning for economic development activities in the region here being Park, Teller, and El Paso County. And it's for helping to coordinate the region and develop what is called the Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy, or CEDS. And that's where I'll show this colorful map of the state. If you look at all of the organizations here, they all have CEDS, including the state itself. The OEDIT went through a process where they developed a CEDS for the state. So we have a statewide CEDS, and then we have strategies all throughout the region. And Pikes Peak Area of Council Government also is a CEDS steward, as we call them, because if you're in one of these asterisked, double asterisks organizations, you have a strategy, but you don't have the partnership planning funding. And you don't have the economic development district is what is defined as the region. And so I just wanted to offer this as an opportunity that is always out there. As long as a regional organization has a strategy, which Pikes Peak Area Council of Government does, there's always an opportunity to apply for districtship. And that's that institutional $70,000 of funding that would come in year after year. And just not that it means anything right now, but Congress has authorized much more than 70,000. They've only appropriated enough funds for 70,000, but that's at least recognition on Congress's part, noting that more needs to go into communities than just 70,000 when it comes to regional economic development coordination. And so I'll leave it there. And if there's questions on that, I'm happy to go through with it. This is the most important slide, I think, because it's a lot of information you're getting today, and my email address is right there. My job is interesting because I get to do activities like this and working and promoting EDA's programs, but I also get to get in the weeds with communities because I can do everything basically but write your grant. I can review your drafts. I can give you guidance on what EDA means by asking this question in the form versus that question in the form, and help navigate so that when and if you do decide to apply for an EDA grant, you'll be able to put your best foot forward as opposed to kind of writing a grant and just hoping for the best. So please do note email address. Happy to work with you anytime, and thank you. So I'll leave it at that. I don't know if we're doing questions or Great, thank you.